The guy wasn't bad technically. He threw me into multiple positions that were pretty inventive and I hadn't been in a while. And if it weren't for the fact there was no engagement, I would have been fine. But I think the combination of me not feeling engaged and probably tensing up and the different positions he put me in put my back at risk, and I paid for it the next day. Hi, this is Mike Balaban. Welcome to another episode of BAMMER Tales. Today I'd like to share with you a cautionary tale about something that happened to me that I wish I could have avoided. It happened only a year ago. Unlike many of my stories for you, which are distant in the past, this was recent. I moved to California from New York in 2020 during COVID. I had some family here and a couple of friends, but that was it. And it was a very difficult time to meet new friends because of the disease and the need to separate from other people. I was pretty horny and lonely by the end of that period. I did have a couple of one-off engagements with old friends, but that really wasn't enough to sustain me during that period. By the time 2022 rolled around and we were able a little bit more frequently and easily to meet up with new people in public places, I had gotten to the point where I was needing to get together with somebody for a healthy dose of sex, but I didn't really have anybody handy. And I try to meet people through the apps because that's the way to do it these days, and get them to agree to meet me for a coffee date. And if you hit it off, if there's chemistry, then maybe you can go home right then and fool around together, or maybe you have another date and eventually sex is forthcoming. That's my preferable way to handle it with guys, because I've learned over time that I'm a demisexual and that I need that sense of emotional chemical connection with another person, along with the fact that I have to find them physically attractive. I can't just do it based on physical attraction anymore. So at the end of 22, in December, I got horny and lonely, and I got on the scruff, and I went searching, and I found a guy visiting San Diego from Washington, D.C. for a business convention. And he liked my photos and I liked his, and he wanted to hook up with me. And I had already decided that I was going to go ahead with the hookup, but I was going to do my best to form a real meaningful connection with this new person from the moment we met. And by the time we ended up having to go to bed, hopefully I would feel engaged, and some kind of emotional connection with him would allow me to make it worthwhile. So I picked him up at his hotel in my car. We start driving back to my apartment. I'm asking him questions about his life, trying to form something in common between us, and it really was like pulling teeth. He was monosyllabic. That means answering everything more or less in one syllable. No, yes, maybe, I don't know.
Yes, no, maybe, I don't know. Can you repeat the question?
He really wasn't more forthcoming, and I couldn't find anything meaningful about him to enable me to establish that connection. By the time we got to my apartment, I was really frustrated, but I figured I'd still keep trying. We go inside, I pour him a drink, we sit on the couch and have our arms around each other and we're talking, and nothing was coming out of him. And it got to the point where I had to make a decision to fish or cut bait, to go upstairs and have sex with this stranger, or to send him on his way. And as much as I wanted to send him on his way, God darn it, I was horny. It had been such a long time. So, you know what? I had chosen him specifically because he was all top. Not versatile, not a bottom, but all top. Something I don't normally care about. I don't care if my partner's a top, or if what we engage in sexually is topping, bottoming, or not even having anal sex. I just want the connection. But in this instance, I chose a top for one prime reason. If we got together and I didn't feel the emotional connection that I turns out wasn't feeling, I wouldn't have to worry about getting aroused and performing as a top with him. Generally, all tops don't really care whether their partner has an erection or not. They're thinking about their own needs. That comes from topping. from anal penetration. So I could go ahead and be the bottom and allow this guy to be the top and proceed with the sex, and I would get some pleasure out of it physically, just none of the emotional pleasure that comes along with it for me when it's meaningful. So I decided to do that. And we went about our tasks appropriately, and to be honest with you, it was a struggle the whole way through. I mean, eventually I got him off, I think twice, but it wasn't natural. It didn't bring me much pleasure. I could even tell that he was working extra hard. And when all was said and done, I said goodbye to him. I offered him a ride back to his hotel, and he said no thanks. He wanted to walk, which said to me that he was probably going to try to arrange another hookup then and there in my neighborhood, which was fine with me. And I let him go, and I went back upstairs to my bedroom and eventually went to sleep. And that would have been the end of things if that was just it, right? Bad sex, bad evening, but nothing ventured, nothing gained. Wrong. I woke up the next morning and I could barely get out of bed. I had back spasms that were hurting so horribly that I had to turn on my side and inch my way to the edge of the bed to get up. And for 7 to 10 more days, I felt that way. I stayed in bed a lot. I took a lot of anti-inflammatories and muscle relaxers. I went to the chiropractor 3 times, and gradually I got better. But it really was a painful penalty for having had bad sex. And the guy wasn't bad technically. He threw me into multiple positions that were pretty inventive, and I hadn't been in a while. And if it weren't for the fact there was no engagement, I would have been fine. But I think the combination of me not feeling engaged and probably tensing up and the different positions he put me in put my back at risk, and I paid for it the next day. Well, at the end of that week-long period, when my back finally healed, okay, I can move on, right? Well, not quite. I had prearranged or pre-scheduled an endoscopy, an upper GI intestinal tract examination with my gastrointestinal doctor to find out the source of some inflammatory pain that I'd been feeling in my stomach. And he put me under anesthesia for about 20 minutes, looked down my throat with a microscope, found what he was looking for, and afterwards, when I came out of the anesthesia, he told me, I found the reason for your discomfort. What's that, doc? You've got 2 ulcers. You're under anesthesia right now. Call me when you're clear-headed tomorrow and we'll talk, which I did. Whereupon he asked me, do you take a lot of anti-inflammatories? I said, no, I hardly ever take any anti-inflammatories. Oh, wait a second, come to think of it. I did take it for about 7 to 10 days straight every few hours to help my back pain go away. He said, bingo, that's where your ulcers came from. As a result, I had to begin taking some medication for 3 more months, come back and get another endoscopy, whereupon he found that the ulcers had healed, and I was finally free of the consequences of my one night of bad sex from about December to the end of March. So one night of bad sex paid badly for me. Not only was the sex really not very pleasurable, but I ended up with back spasms and ulcers. The moral of this story is listen to your gut. Follow your instincts. Had I done that, none of this would have happened. Hopefully you've never had an experience as painful as mine. If you have, please let me know. Thanks for listening to another episode of BAMMER Tales. This has been Mike Balaban.